You know the exact moment someone walks into a crowded room, head held high, completely at ease, and every eye locks onto them. The immediate assumption is that they won a genetic lottery, that they were simply born with a special confidence gene. Meanwhile, you're standing in the corner, overthinking your own posture and wishing you had even a fraction of that untouchable aura. This split-screen diagram highlights the core problem. On the left is the polished, perfectly linear highlight reel everyone projects, especially on social media. But on the right is the chaotic, looping reality of a behind-the-scenes life, packed with hidden mistakes and awkward moments. When you constantly measure your own messy internal reality against someone else's heavily filtered external image, the gap feels impossible to close. Taking any kind of action feels far too risky. That paralysis stems from a major chronological error. We convince ourselves that we have to wait until we are no longer scared before we attempt something new. The reality is that elite athletes, seasoned actors, and top executives still get nervous before they perform. True courage is taking the shot while your hands are shaking, not waiting for the shaking to stop. Looking at this flowchart, we can see where the wires get crossed. The false assumption is that confidence leads to action. In reality, the sequence shatters and reverses. Action produces confidence. Because it is generated entirely after the fact, confidence is a mechanical output. It is something we can mathematically engineer rather than a trait we have to miraculously inherit. To start engineering that output, we can bypass the mind altogether and use the body to trick the brain. When you slump your shoulders and look at the floor, you create a biological feedback loop. Your nervous system reads that collapsed posture as a signal of defeat and vulnerability, and it dials down your psychological state to match. You can sever that loop with immediate physical corrections. Stand up straight, pull your shoulders back, lift your chin, and take a deep, regulated breath. Your brain detects those deliberate physical cues of safety and strength and immediately responds by generating a localized state of confidence on demand. Physical state aside, the primary barrier stopping most people from acting is an overactive brain. The mind loves to protect us by rapidly generating worst-case scenarios and what-if spirals. Between your initial impulse to raise your hand or start a conversation and the moment that paralyzing hesitation sets in, there is a very brief window of time. This linear timeline visualizes that gap. Notice the space between the impulse node and the action node. By dropping a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 countdown block into that space, we create a manual cognitive override right before the overthinking zone begins. Counting backward requires active cognitive effort. It yanks your focus away from fear and forces your brain to concentrate exclusively on the numbers. By denying your fear the incubation time it needs to grow, you force raw, immediate action. You bypass the need for natural bravery completely. It's too easy, bro. Of course, forcing a single action doesn't create unshakable self-belief overnight. Long-term confidence requires compounding evidence. This cumulative bar chart models the process exactly like a video game experience meter. You start by collecting points through microactions, saying hello to a stranger, or asking a single question in class. As the data inputs scale up to slightly larger actions, like speaking up during a meeting, you add massive chunks of evidence to your brain's internal ledger. Over weeks and months, this consistent accumulation of data points permanently raises your baseline level of confidence. It creates a cyclical momentum. You take a small action, you generate evidence that you survived it, and that new evidence fuels a higher level of confidence for your next attempt. Relentless self-assurance doesn't require one massive leap of faith. It is the mathematical result of stacking hundreds of trivial, low-stakes actions. There is still one final mental hurdle that prevents people from ever starting this cycle: the intense fear of what other people will think if you fail. Psychologists actually call this the spotlight effect. As this illustration shows, we walk into a crowded room assuming a giant light is tracking our every move, highlighting our flaws. The ironclad reality is that every single person in that room has their own spotlight pointed directly down at themselves. Everyone around you is far too preoccupied with their own personal insecurities and hidden problems to actively judge yours. External judgment is largely a self-imposed mental illusion. Letting that illusion dictate your actions and sacrificing your potential to avoid a judgment that doesn't even exist is the ultimate tragedy. We see the complete blueprint in this quadrant grid. Abandon the highlight reel, fix physical posture, count backward from 5, stack small wins to build compounding evidence. Accepting that external judgment is an illusion lets these steps function without interference. When we look back at the archetype from the beginning, the reality becomes clear. Their powerful aura is not some genetic magic. It is simply the invisible, daily execution of this exact formula. Confidence is no longer a mystery to be solved, but a system to be operated. When you stop waiting for a feeling and start relying on a process, the entire challenge shifts from impossible to inevitable. It's too easy, bro.